Okay, to conclude my my videos on investing on operating activities, I'm going to look at dividend paid. I'll take you back to this first one, like I did in the previous ones. So I'm dealing with your dividend paid, right? So when you're dealing with dividend paid, the basic formula there is to say, I'm going to give you two ways of calculating dividend paid. So depending with the information that is provided, if all the information is given, you can choose the easier one for you to remember. So method number one is where you say shareholders for dividend, right? Shareholders for dividend at the beginning. Okay, like that. And then you're going to say total dividends for the year. For the year. When I'm talking of total dividends for the year, I'm talking of both interim and final, right? Combined, right? And then you're going to say, so this is a plus, then you're going to say minus shareholders for dividend at the end. Shareholders for dividend at the end of the year. This is in brackets, and this will give you dividend paid. Right, but in order for us to, so this one is very straightforward. So if your shareholders for dividend at the beginning is given, it's this one. And then if you're given interim and final dividend, you add them together, they give you that figure. And then your shareholders for dividend at the end, that figure if it's given. So you can actually use this basic formula there. Shareholders for dividend at the beginning plus dividends for the year, that is interim and final, minus shareholders for dividend at the end. But however, sometimes some information is provided, sometimes there is missing information and all that. And for you to be able to do, obviously, your dividends, you need to understand note number 7, which is your ordinary share capital. Now, but I'm going to give you an alternative method, which is faster, but sometimes you can use it because it's faster, but sometimes you use it because the information that is provided actually forces you to use that. So the alternative method that you can use here to calculate dividend paid is to say shareholders for dividend at the beginning plus interim dividend. This formula is actually the shorter one because you can just say shareholders for dividend at the beginning plus interim dividend. Now, it will still give you the same answer. I'm going to explain here just briefly why. Now, remember, interim dividend is paid during the year after the half year results are produced. That's when you pay interim dividend. So in other words, you make a payment to dividend to shareholders based on your half year results, which is going to be done during the year. So interim dividend result in an outflow at sometime during the year. But final dividend is never paid in the same year because you first of all have to close the year, do your financial records, have them audited, and then the dividend can only be paid in the following year because you have to go through the year-end processes of doing your financial statements, having them audited, and then make a proposal to the board, and then having it approved and all that. And these processes happen after year-end, meaning to say shareholders for dividend for the particular year is never paid in the same year because of those year-end processes that have to be done after year-end, meaning to say it can only be paid in the following year. Now, the implication is that in any particular year, you always pay your shareholders for dividend of last year. This is shareholders for dividend of last year and the interim dividend of the current year. Because to just show you in some detail, let me draw it in the form of a timeline in order for me to show you why I'm saying shareholders for dividend for that particular year is never paid in the same year. In other words, why is final dividend not paid in the same year? So if I put an accounting period like this, this is 1 March 2024 to 28 Feb 2025. Now, interim dividend for this year is going to be paid somewhere there, halfway through the year. Now, but final dividend of this year can only be paid after year end, because your financial statements are done as at 28 February, but they are only done a day after, from a day after, which means you start doing your statement of comprehensive income, your balance sheet, your cash flow after the 28th, because you want all transactions for the whole year. Meaning to say, when you declare this dividend here, you're already outside of this accounting period. It can only be paid in this following year. Now, the same principle means that the dividend of last year, the final dividend of last year, activities happened there, but it was never paid because the year had already ended, which means this final dividend, this is the final dividend of last year, it encroaches into the current year, and then the final dividend of this year encroaches into the following year. So the implication is that dividend paid is always made up of final dividend of last year plus interim dividend of this year, because the final dividend of this year is only going to be paid in the following year. Hence this formula here. Shareholders for dividend at the beginning, which is final dividend of last year, plus interim dividend of the current year. Now, if you want to see even from here, this one, shareholders for dividend at the beginning, is this one. Now, why am I saying interim? If you check very closely here, I said interim plus final minus final. So the final is added here, but it's subtracted there. So if you say interim plus final minus final, you are only leaving interim, which is the reason why we only have interim here. So this is the second method. So you can use any one of them if all the information is given, or sometimes the information provided actually forces you to use one of the two. Thank you.